I'd like to take a moment to share with you something I just don't understand. And part of the reason I want to share it with you is to increase my capacity to understand more. Sometimes it requires that we communicate what we are dealing with, exchanging, in order to become more aware of something. So here I am. It may not look like it to you, but this is an actual photograph of a dark night. And in this photograph of the dark night, there are tiny, tiny little specks of light, stars, that we're not visibly aware of. But if you were to keep taking a photograph like the Hubble did of a dark night in the sky, sooner or later they realize that there are trillions of galaxies in this dark night sky. If we keep adding more and more light, we become aware of more and more. Okay, that sounds obvious, right? But I'm suggesting it can go from a dark night sky to something that might look like this. Now, this is a big jump from the dark night sky, but the dark night sky is behind it. The dark night sky is still there. Now we're focused on a single point. Now, the challenging thing is, if I put that single point, like I'm going to show you another picture, if I put it right here, I mean, literally, if I put my attention here, not out there, I know that's a weird one, but when I'm experiencing the night sky out there, I want to experience it as if it were here at this particular point. Now, if I do that consistently enough, then theoretically it's supposed to do this. Now, I'm not able quite yet to be able to get in here by doing it here, but I'm having some interesting experiences along the way I thought I would share. First, let me back up for just a moment. I know we've covered some of this before, but I'm referring to a place that is now physically here. In the past, I've not focused significantly on different places in the heart. Lately, I'm doing more. These 2 points in the heart, these are nodes. They have a sinal node, ventricle node, arterial node. These are the 2 parts of the heart that make thump and thump, 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 thump. These are the opposite points that creates all of the distribution of blood, but at the same time, this is an electromagnetic generator of a magnetic field around your heart. That's well known in science. What's not so obvious is how it creates something like this. You've seen this before. This point is electromagnetically creating an energy. Now, on a vertical level, sometimes it looks like this. This is a graphic from the internet. Some of you have seen before. But this same spot here is doing vertical and horizontal at the same time. That spot, by the way, to me is this place here. Okay. What I'm saying is the natural tendency we have is to go out. I'm suggesting that you can practice going in. It doesn't mean you need to meditate long hours to go there or even to close your eyes. You can walk down the street, take the colors of a beautiful tree or a flower or a person or a running dog for that matter, and process it here. Now, theoretically, over a period of time, if you go to this location, you can dilate this. Now, what's hard to grasp is inside this place is your personal access to everything known and unknown. Do I say everything known? I'm saying your personal access to everything in the physical dimensions of life. Your personal access to all emotional content. Your personal access to yourself, your well-being, your happiness. This is the point that has the ability to be able to change your existence. I'm saying it is accessed by going inward while walking around doing an inward. If I see a beautiful hummingbird and I like the feeling of it, and I process it here, I'm changing my level of perception about all things. If I have a beautiful sunset, sunrise, I hear a beautiful piece of music and I process it in an inwardly directed way, consciously, I become slightly more aware of everything. Now you can say you can practice it like this if you want. This happens to be the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom in all these different vectors or directions or types. How many types of minerals? Well, you can go look it up. How many thousands of minerals are there? Not just in the periodic table of chemistry, but in all those things called minerals. How many forms of plants are there? How many forms of animals are there? So the suggestion is the sincere desire to want to feel it starts in this location. I know it's really kind of odd, but you have the same place here. Now this obviously is a fingerprint. I'm suggesting there is a point within the fingerprint where you can access things that have greater permanence. A fingerprint is a form of permanence. I'm suggesting that this point is like a fingerprint. What's the fingerprint? It's relative to your skin, of course. But the fingerprint forms between 12 and 16 weeks of gestation in your mother's womb. You already have your fingerprints. This is the mechanism. Just my opinion, this is the same mechanism here that gives you the access here. How is that your fingerprint? This is a reasonable question to ask. I'm suggesting that by occupying this, going here, doing this, it may even look something like this. This tiny point, which by the way is a photograph from the Webb satellite, the Webb photographic instrument of space, right? Telescope. You see this tiny point? These tiny points exist everywhere. You see this tiny point? It's the same thing as this tiny point. It's the same thing as this tiny point. I know this is a sideways view, but this is the same tiny point. If you were to look at it from here, it's a tiny point. If you look at it anywhere along the way, it's a tiny point. That point, weirdly enough, is where the equinox is But I'm saying that if we occupy that point, you could do this. This is a tiny point where you distinguish yourself from the collective consciousness of all other mass feelings. The tiny point, this is just a metaphor, the sincere desire to want to feel your own tiny point. You have a tiny point. It's not my tiny point. I don't occupy your tiny point. You will not occupy my tiny point. We have a relationship like all the drops of water in the ocean. That's a tiny point. Do you know anyone who strives to occupy that point? I'm suggesting that this metaphor is this tiny point is ruled by this tiny little point in your own heart that people don't actually strive to occupy. I'm suggesting that the sincere desire to want to occupy it vibrationally might look like this, and much more beautiful than this. Occupy this point. Now, I confess, I can't do it. Why? Well, it requires I have a feeling that's softer than this. It's this tiny point right here. I can't yet do that degree of softness, sweetness, and awareness all combined in that tiny point. I'm suggesting you start. How do you start? Just take any social emotional experience, whether it's traumatic or triggering or not, and orient it to this location that I showed you inside the heart. Just orient it there. Just change the orientation. That's giving me a remarkable series of experiences, and it was significant enough for me to share it with you. Go there. Occupy your personal point, which will give you the opportunity to be an individual while still aware of the collective. In order to do that, there's a whole bunch of work that needs to be done, but the work has to start somehow, someday. That's a lot to consider, think about. Take it with you. Use what you can. I hope this serves you in some way. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.